Record.
So, a lot of people are asking, what's wrong with the music, the charts these days? Why aren't they as good as they used to be? What's wrong? How can we do this? And I was listening to a guy on YouTube, and I was thinking, this is the reason why I don't buy any music anymore. This is the reason why I don't buy music. It's not, I haven't stopped listening to music. I'm not like, I'm done with music. I listen to music all the time. But because of streaming services and YouTube and stuff, if I bought all the music I liked, I have no space to put it all, But I have kept a lot of the music I've liked. It may be difficult to get, or if they're local bands, or so on and so forth, or if it's stuff I've worked on, or if it's personal. It's, certain memories, and so on and so forth. Now, back in my time, there was no internet. Well, there was internet, but it was very, very expensive. Even to the point when, people could download stuff, you would normally go to a friend, you would pay them a little bit of money or whatever, or you would give them a cassette. You would give them a cassette and they would record it onto a cassette for you. So that's what people used to do back in the heyday. Also, somebody would give you a CD. If it was in school, you couldn't listen to that CD straight away. There was always that excitement of opening the CD and putting it in the CD player and listening to it. Also, not everybody could give you a copy of something. My music teacher had a rule that people couldn't give me tapes of things in the end because of copyright. She wanted to teach me about copyright. So in the end, she was stopping people from outside giving me things. So I used to have to ask people outside of school to give me things on tape, and they normally would. It would normally be if I did something or whatever, I would get, they could do me a cassette tape or something. It would have to be, on educational grounds or whatever. But I would normally have, I think my mother did not like me collecting cassettes of things. So I would normally have to sneakily get cassettes off people so I could listen to stuff. Nowadays, if you want to listen to something, it's there. Straight there. It's, even if your parents don't want you to listen to something, that's something else as well. If your parents don't want you to have a certain type of music in the house, well, your kids are gonna be listening to it without your parents knowing, because again, there's streaming services, there's YouTube. When your parents aren't around, you're gonna hide in your room and you're gonna listen to it anyways. And that's another good thing. My parents don't know what I listen to these days. There's no way of them knowing unless they were to go into my Spotify and look at my music history. I think they know what sort of music I listen to by looking at I'm signed into YouTube on one of their devices, so they can see what I listen to. If they go into one of my playlists, they can see a lot of the music I listen to, and probably they won't agree with a lot of it. So this answers the question, why do I not listen to new music? Why don't I listen to it? It's garbage, it's crap. There is no Metallica anymore. There's no Guns N' Roses anymore. There's no Ozzy Osbourne. There's no Sabbath. There's no, all the great rock bands aren't putting out new records. So the stuff I like is either old stuff or new stun rock bands. Now, I have not stopped listening to new music, and I kind of want to put that out, you know? There is no new dance music at the moment. I want to kind of put that out. The dance music that is new is very mainstream, and it isn't bad. I listen to it. Not to say that I like it, but I listen to it for work purposes. You know, have I got to have this new track? Is it good enough? Am I feeling it? All that good stuff. And there is a lot of new dance music that I do like. You know, and there are other rock bands that I do like, and there is stuff that is coming out that I do love, and, you know, like Pendulum, Rob Squire from Pendulum put up a fantastic new track. When I heard it, I just couldn't believe that it was, you know, Rob's stuff. You know, I couldn't believe it was chilled and mellow, but it had that Pendulum sound, had that Knife Party sound to it. You could tell it was coming from a Rob place. You could tell it was coming from him, but you could tell it was completely new. You could tell he was trying to not be Pendulum or Knife Party. You could tell it was trying to be new and fresh, and that's why I loved it, and that's why I love all of his stuff, even the rubbish that isn't, you know, the not so good stuff that Pendulum have put out. I think Pendulum are a band that can put out, you know, they can get away with putting out a not so great record, because you can tell they get pushed to do that. And it's the same with a lot of bands. It's like Metallica. Metallica can put out a rubbish record tomorrow, and you can bet your bottom dollar I would be listening to it. And so it's one of those things. If you follow a band, if you really love a band, you know, you will listen to their records, whether they be good or bad. Okay, Black Sabbath put out a couple of really bad records that I don't particularly like, but they weren't really meant to be Sabbath records. They were meant to be Tony Iommi solo projects. And really, they'd have been better just as a Tony Iommi album, not as Sabbath albums, because they weren't coming from Sabbath. They weren't sort of Sabbath records, and they're not in my collection for that reason. And also, I go and try and revisit albums that I got rid of that I never liked. I go and revisit all that stuff. But then again, it's hard to find stuff that I really love, like Walter Carlos's Switched on Bach. All that really good stuff. But there's thousands of artists out there on the web that you can go out and listen to, regardless whether you've heard them or not. And I think, you know, some of the artists aren't on streaming services, they're on like stores instead, because I'd rather you bought their work instead of streaming it. But anyway, that's another subject for another day. But I haven't stopped listening, you know.
Mic trigger, mic lock, button. Mic lock, mic lock, mic lock, button is on.
I mean, when I'm not doing my radio presenting, I don't technically follow the charts, because the stuff in the charts ain't worth listening to. It just ain't, you know, there's nothing in it that speaks to me. There's nothing saying, ooh, I've got to go out. I mean, the last time I bought a record, it was a Hot Red Chili Peppers album, and you know, I mean, even stuff that I do like find along the way, I'll just like it on Spotify and add it to the thousands of playlists that I have, instead of buying it and owning it. I still have CDs in my collection that I'll never get rid of. Even if I was to ditch the rest of my collection, there are records that I wouldn't get rid of for whatever purpose. Because they're near dear albums, they were difficult to collect at the time, or I had to save money to buy those records, or it was birthday or Christmas money that I had to get them records, or I had to do really good homework to get them records. I've actually got a Rush album on vinyl, which I've got backed up somewhere, but I won't get rid of that vinyl because somebody gave it me because I got a B in a music GCSE, and people bow down to you, and getting hold of these records, that was really something that I'd earned, that Rush album. Unfortunately, it gets put somewhere in the dust. It's been on a turntable a few times, but it's a really nice sleeve, and it's the only vinyl that I have. Actually, no, I've got two vinyls, but the other one is a picture disc, and I've played that a few times, so it's lost value. So, anyways, those two records are probably the ones that I have on vinyl. But again, if you hear an artist, it's always best to hear something and love it and buy it and not be expected or forced to love an artist before you buy it. It's always great when I find new artists along the way and I think, oh, wow, that's amazing, I just think, I think there's like a ska band, I think they're called the Satellites or the Clatterlights or something. And I had to go listen to them. And I'll tell you what, they are a band, they're a new band that I probably would buy on CD. I probably would buy the CD or cassette or whatever, because they're a band, they play pretty well, and so on and so forth.
11:03 a.m.
So, anyway, they're the reasons why I don't buy music today. That's why there isn't so much good stuff out there today. People are streaming stuff. They're not buying the music. The TV channels aren't churning out the decent... if you listen to Jack Black's speech at School of Rock, the man, he's got a point. It was, when you hear his interview, that speech was nothing, but it came from somewhere. It came from somewhere. But the man definitely ruined rock and roll. The man definitely ruined rock and roll. And ruined music television. Because music television back in the day, it was rock and roll. These were the artists that you have to listen to. Nirvana's Nevermind was an album you went out and bought. Led Zeppelin's fourth album was an album you went out and bought. The Foo Fighters, you went out and bought those albums. You know, in your honor, you went out and bought those albums and listened to them. The White Stripes, White Elephant, Rage Against the Machine, Metallica, Ride the Lightning, you know, Hum the Bell Tolls. These are anthems. We could be sitting here all day, you know? Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast. Seriously, you know, these are things that you went out and bought and you cherished those albums because they only had 12 songs on or 3 or 4 songs on or whatever. You were limited. You know, when you had cassettes before the days of the MP3 player, you could cram loads of songs on a cassette, you know, and change those albums out. Okay, well, maybe you might like a different song next week. But if you liked a different song next week, you had to make sure that you were going to like that song for months and months and months. Nowadays, I don't know if people enjoy those anthems as much as they used to because of the internet. You know, you don't have to like a song, that same song, next week as you did the previous week because you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to listen to that album every week. You know, you could be done with it. But there are things, and I've spoke to my stepdad about this. You know, there are CDs in our collections that we probably would never get rid of because they took time to buy, you know, pennies, you know, whatever you save to buy those records. You know, and brothers or sisters. I remember my sister, she went and bought an album and it costed her about, I think the most expensive album in her collection was the, what was it? I think it was a Alanis Morissette album. And it was a difficult album to get. And my sister got this album. And I don't know if she's got rid of it or not. I'm hoping she's not got rid of it because it was a difficult album for her to get. I'm not a big Alanis Morissette fan, but I remember her getting it. And I think she got a Robbie Williams album signed. So there's 2 things, you know, that you get. I'd try and not, you know, if there's an album that's been signed or something, I definitely wouldn't get rid of it very quickly. I know I've thrown a lot of CDs out, but I've been through most of those ones thinking, I've still got albums where they've got the price on the front cover. You know, I remember getting this and spending, you know, 20 quid in HMV or whatever. You know, there are albums that I have got rid of just because I don't listen to them so much. But there are albums that I've kept in the collection for the artwork or for whatever it is. And I've looked after them. They're like gold mines in my collection. Gold dust. And so I keep hold of them. You know, and it's like whatever you collect, if it holds near and dear to you, sometimes, you know, you lose a lot of things, but I think most of it is just like, it's just stuff, isn't it? And, you know, things you try and keep hold of, and I think when you move or whatever, you realise that the stuff you do lose. And you know, it's, you know, the prized stuff that you keep near and dear somewhere, and then the stuff that doesn't really matter, it just goes. Anyway, that's today's video, and it's going to be a midweek one, and I do have a few other videos that just haven't reached the surface yet, for whatever reason.
Mic trigger. Mic lock. Finish recording.